Yo, YouTube, what's going on? It's your boy Salvation Lee. We're back with another video, guys. And guys, today, man, we're going over the year of review, the 2019, the Call of Duty news of the year, the biggest stories, and maybe what you may have missed earlier on in the year, or reminding you of some of the wild things that happened throughout the year. Because this really was a packed year of news, and there was beef, there was franchising, there was Black Ops 4, there was the COD burner, there were so many other things that went down throughout the year. I thought it would be a fun idea to kind of go through the year, go through some of the biggest storylines, and talk about it just a little bit and reflect on how awesome the year was. But with that said, let's get right into it and start in January of 2019. So of course in January, the league had basically just been starting. We had already had CWL Vegas. We were heading into the second event of the year, and all the teams were trying to qualify for the Pro League. And the biggest news at the beginning of this year in January was that Faze failed to qualify for the Pro League. Coming into this year, they looked pretty good, and then they failed to qualify for the Pro League. That was beyond shocking at the beginning of the year. Really did cause for a pretty major roster mania shift heading into the Pro League, and then multiple teams trying to sell their spots so that Faze could get back in. I mean, that basically caused that whole current roster of Faze to break apart and head to different teams, caused 100T to get Priesta, and then like Attach, went to EG. Zuma went to go sub for OpTic for a while, and then found his way back on Faze and everything else. So it really caused a massive wave and was the biggest domino to fall early on in the year, which caused a lot more news in the upcoming weeks. So January had a few other big events that happened throughout the year, and the next big thing was that franchising finally was confirmed to be coming to Call of Duty. Like the sources first confirmed that this is happening. It was confirmed by TK's owner because they weren't in Call of Duty anymore, and fans were wondering like, yo, why aren't you getting back into COD? And that was because they were trying to get a franchise spot, and he said that and kind of leaked it for the first time. And so that was when it was first officially confirmed. The next big domino to fall was Infinite Esports announcing at the end of January that OpTic might be for sale. And so that was the first time that people started to realize that, oh wow, there could be something here, and really, really bad news for OpTic if things wouldn't go their way. And of course that developed throughout the year, and I'm sure we'll talk about it again. But yeah, January was a pretty crazy month just because of those three stories, and then of course the start of like some roster mania news and other things that are happening there. And that kind of led us through up into March, quite a few different stories that went out throughout the month. The first one was Midnight Esports being accused of blackmailing their players. That whole fiasco was absolutely ridiculous, like with the payments and all of the different leaks and opinions that are coming out with different players about the owners and the esports org as a whole. And that gave them a really, really, really bad reputation in this scene, and was massive news back in March. And so then of course in March we had JCap versus E United, Simp finally replacing JCap on the roster. And so that started a feud between JCap and Clayster, where they went back and forth at each other about being bad teammates, and JCap was really trying to roast Clay and everything else. And so that was a really, really fun drama back in March, and was kind of like the first beef that the COD scene had in a while. It had been pretty friendly for the past like almost year or more, it felt like. Probably like for like a year leading back into World War II. It'd been pretty friendly overall in the competitive COD scene. So the COD scene definitely needed a new feud. I mean, we're seeing it even this year with Empire versus OpTic Gaming, and that's going to be a really, really fun rivalry for sure. The next thing was the whole Nagafen Spacely Pro League swap sub thing, where like Spacely and Nagafen were going back and forth, getting dropped and not dropped and undropped and back in the starting lineups. Spacely was playing so well throughout the Pro League. This went on and on throughout the year, as Spacely versus Nagafen on Gen G was kind of a debate throughout the whole year. And I'm definitely assuming we're going to have some of those type of conversations this year and in the future with substitutes and the Pro League now. And then the last thing of that month was the whole Rampart LG CWL Fort Worth discussion, where LG got blacklisted from scrims for using the Rampart thanks to Classic. And that was a big debate earlier on in the year about that Rampart and how GA should work, and whether or not teams deserve to get blacklisted, or if it was fair to blacklist teams. That was really a fun discussion earlier on in the year as well. So skipping forward to May, the first 5 franchise teams were finally revealed in May. That was big news for COD's future. We were all wondering and speculating how this might go down. Of course, during that time, it was confirmed that it was going to be city-based model, that teams were going to be the Houston whoever's, the Dallas whoever's, or Toronto, or whatever it's going to be. It was going to be location based. So finally we got the first 5 cities paired with their orgs announced in May. So then later on in May, also this was kind of like the next continuation of the OpTic Gaming saga. This was the first time that the rumors were actually kind of spread around that they might be sold to Immortals, which of course, as we all know, ended up happening. So May was the first time we got those rumors. That was just a saga throughout the month. So then we had like the OpTic versus Infinite, like Hitch and Hex podcast. There's like the 2-hour long plus podcast where they talked about all the drama of Infinite versus OpTic over the past year or two. So then near the end of May, like this was when we had the whole LG drama with Gunless, and Gunless kind of like got dropped to a substitute role, replaced by Ricky, heading into Roster Mania in June, where we knew this was all going to go down and there was going to be a really spicy Roster Mania. And so that happened at the end of May, leading right into June. So then at the beginning of June, we got the official word that Immortals was buying OpTic Gaming. And so finally that saga comes to an end. I mean, there were still a lot of questions about whether or not they would sell their teams or how that would all work with OpTic Gaming's current esports teams. Of course, throughout the coming months, we find out they're going to sell basically everything, and all that's going to be remaining is the OpTic CoD team. So that was kind of the OpTic Gaming saga of 2019, finally coming to a close in June for the most part, besides those last wrap-up details. And that led us right into Roster Mania, which in the middle of June, we got a pretty crazy one, knowing that Gunless was probably going to leave team, the whole Hook and Envy mix-up. And so Hook went to Splice, which was big-time news, and then Gunless went from LG to Envy, and what we all thought would shift the balance of the Pro League. But, I mean, now looking back on it, it really didn't have any effect, as LG and Splice totally didn't live up to the expectations. Neither of them could really find their groove again, while United, 100T, and even OpTic kind of got better and better as the year went on. That was kind of a letdown, but at the time was big time news with Gunless and Hook changing teams. So heading into July, we finally got the announcement for the next two teams, which was the LA OpTic Immortals team and then the Minnesota Vikings Will Family plus Gary V team, CoD Minnesota. And so we finally got those teams announced in July. It was definitely expected that we're going to get more teams, but everyone was anticipating, hopefully hearing about even more teams sooner than later. Obviously, it took more time than a lot of us thought to get more teams announced. That was the big announcement of the summer for the Call of Duty League. Then throughout the rest of July, we had some pretty interesting like beef or drama in the COD scene. That was the Temp versus Brack like beef that happened throughout that summer, where they were kind of going at it on Twitter, roasting each other, saying they were both garbage and everything else, how Temp does his thing. That was a really fun time. I'm always in for some beef in the COD scene, and so you love to see it. The Temp versus Brack stuff was really fun. And that led us into the COD Burner exposed Censor video, where we finally got Censor exposing the COD Burner, putting on the jacket, putting on the hat, and exposing the COD Burner. So that was quite the drama. I mean, that was going on throughout the whole year. People were trying to figure out, who is this COD Burner? The COD Burner kept leaking all the Roster Mania news of the past year or two or whatever. And so finally, we got an idea of who the COD Burner actually was, and Censor finally exposed him. So heading into the end of summer and into fall, of course, there was COD Champs. United took home the championship. And then heading into September, this is when the thoughts of Roster Mania were coming into play, the new Call of Duty League, like what's going to happen with all these things. So we get the announcements for the rest of the teams. And in September, we get the news that, like, you know, during Roster Mania, this whole season here, the whole Crim versus Scump, Crim versus LA OpTic, the whole Karma and Crim drama, basically that roster falling apart happened in, you know, early September, where we find out that, like, wow, this was a little bit dirtier of a breakup than we thought when it came to Crim and LA OpTic and everything else. And so that kind of happened in like early to mid-September, where Crim was leaking LA OpTic's roster, dropping more bombs on Dashy and Tej. And of course, throughout this whole fall was all Roster Mania news about where guys are going to end up. We really didn't know. And this was when the rumors heated up that Scump, Formal, and Hex were headed to join NRG in Chicago to be the Chicago COD team. Finally, heading into October, the rosters kind of start settling into place. CDL Intel is doing a great job of leaking information as he gets it and figuring it out. And so finally, heading into October and into the release of Modern Warfare, we have a pretty good idea of what all the teams are going to be. Modern Warfare, of course, has been a theme throughout this whole year. I guess we can even talk about that when it comes to like the leaks about Modern Warfare and how Modern Warfare might play. There's the beta in there, of course. There are so many other things. And finally, Modern Warfare releases in October. And basically, since October, we've been dealing with the changes to Modern Warfare, dealing with this game as a whole, and finalizing substitutes for the Call of Duty League, checking out the amateur scene and how it plays, and what teams are going to be playing in the path to pro versus the franchise league. So, I mean, basically, that's a quick recap of the last few months. Now we're sitting in the beginning of 2020, now just a few weeks away from the start of the Call of Duty League. And I think everyone's pretty excited and definitely ready for the league to start. I mean, normally we would have already had an event at the beginning of December, and we probably would have had a second event coming up here in like a week or two. But man, we're still three and a half weeks away from the start of the Call of Duty League. So that was a big time wrap up. I hope you guys enjoyed it. I mean, there was a lot that happened. Drop in the comments your favorite moments of 2019 and what you're looking forward to in 2020. But again, I hope you guys have a fantastic New Year's if you guys are watching this later. But as always, guys, I'm your boy Salvation's Lee, and we'll see you next time. I'm out.